Welcome, everybody. Hope your Monday is going well. Hope it's not manic. Today's August 16th, 2021, and here I have for you episode uno, Magic Johnson. For those that live under a rock, 132, 4-3 Sports Talk. Hope everybody's doing well. I got stuff from the news, scores from the Major League Baseball and the NBA Summer League, and I have my fantasy football piece ready for you. Quick a little formula that you can use to effectively have a good draft and keep your season intact. It worked for me, and I believe it will work for you. If you follow it to a T, I guarantee that your team will make it to the fantasy football postseason. So let's get into it. For the news, Clippers acquired guard Eric Bledsoe from the Grizzlies for Pat Beverly, Rajon Rondo, and Daniel Oturu. I feel like, though, Pat Beverly is going to move again before the season starts. Two teams I have in mind are the Orlando Magic or the Minnesota Timberwolves. Timberwolves need a veteran presence as they've been rebuilding for 60 years since Garnett got traded. So I think that would be the best fit for him. So if something like that goes down tonight or a Tuesday morning, I mean, at least you could say you heard it from me first, a day or so before. So Eric Bledsoe going to the Clippers works, in my opinion, because Bledsoe is not going to start. Kawhi came back. Not like on a supermax deal, but he didn't get as much as I thought, which means whoever's looking at him, whoever's setting the negotiations, probably saw what I saw or better. I think he tried to do what he did to get out of San Antonio, to go to Los Angeles. I kind of felt like that was happening again. When the Clippers were playing Phoenix in the NBA playoffs, it was kind of funny to me that Kawhi didn't travel with the team. And like how he just seemingly disappeared from the playoffs. And we found out later it was a knee issue. And why it was announced so late, I think from him, he didn't want anyone in his camp to let it out because the same way he came out of San Antonio. It's like mirror to what happened back then. But Eric Bledsoe gives him depth at the guard position. When your boy, Paul George, is playing like shit, there's another guy who can hit the three, the deep two, and he's a decent defender. Eric Bledsoe to the Clippers. Tennis great Roger Federer is going to be out for a remainder for most of the year. So this includes him missing the U.S. Open, which is okay because I didn't want him to win it, and I have a wager on someone else to do so. So Roger Federer be out at least until November, at least until November. And then he might take the additional month off of December as well. I hope he gets better because he was once my favorite. Honus Wagner. Now, if you collect baseball cards, you know the dream is to get one of these. I was 13 when I first learned about it, and back then it was like $2.2 or $3.2 million. Now it's sold for $6.6. So kids, if you start collecting those cards, don't give up that hobby because you never know. One day you might come across a really decent card like a Tom Brady rookie, or one of those ones they used to do with the pieces of the football or pieces of the jersey in them, memorabilia cards. So don't stop collecting. That's the key. Barcelona, I feel bad for the city. Not only did they fail to get Lionel Messi to sign an extension, their city is in a $1.6 billion debt. Sucks to be them. What else I got? Udonis Haslem, at 41 years old, returns to the Miami Heat for his 19th season. Haslem's a great defender. Occasionally he'll step back and hit the three. Those corner twos, the deep ones, he's a master at those. And I like his consistency, the fact that he was able to stay healthy for most part of his career. And the fact that he was a guy that stayed and contributed to the rebuild down there, and was key and very vocal in having Jimmy Buckets come down to Miami. So, Mr. Haslam, enjoy your season. So no fans are allowed for the upcoming Tokyo Paralympics. I myself don't know what Paralympics are, and I don't know. I'm gonna look it up after I get done with this episode. But I'm kind of pissed because what if there was some chance I got tickets? Now I can't go because of what's going on in Tokyo. Tampa Bay Buccaneers waive ex-Navy defensive back given special exemption. I don't like when veterans get slighted in any way, shape, or form. So, fuck you, Tampa Bay. Here's something huge. Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson was absent from practice. This coming a couple days after the NFL questioned one of the women involved in the lawsuits. I'm not too sure what the connection is. I don't like to speculate, especially on stuff like this. I hope Deshaun didn't do it. But if he did, you deserve to go to jail and lose your opportunity to play in the NFL. And preseason week 2 is coming up. So tomorrow I will have a breakdown of who's playing who and what I think you can expect to see going forward. Like Trevor Lawrence and potentially getting 3 quarters maybe? Or they might just give him the first half, but I'm wondering if they'll give those guys more time because there's only 3 weeks of preseason football. As you know, there's a 17th week of the regular season, so I'm all for that. More football. So let's get into some scores before I give you the fantasy piece. I'm going to try to be quick with this. NBA Summer League, Sacramento over Dallas, 86-70. Washington beats the Bucks by 10, 93-83. Brooklyn over San Ann, 104-100. Minnesota over Philly. Philly over Minnesota, 96-94 in overtime. What I have to say about the Philadelphia 76ers is you guys should just get rid of Ben Simmons, dude. And Joel Embiid needs to be paid. From what I found out yesterday, that should happen within the coming days. And just to take a guess at it, I'll say it's 5 years, $206 million. One thing about Joel is he gets hurt a lot, but when he's on, he's one of the top 5 NBA players in this league. I saw a little argument on Facebook not too long ago about people claiming that Luka Doncic is not top 5. Luka Doncic is a top 5. And those of you who always put LeBron number 1 need to realize that he's in his upper 30s and the minutes per game, the points per game, the field goal percentage, all that stuff is starting to dip. So he's showing that he's human. He might have been Superman for a little while, but he's getting older. So it's going to be interesting to see who's the new face of the league once LeBron says peace. I'm not even gonna speculate on that because during the NBA playoffs, I declared that Devin Booker from the Phoenix Suns was the next face of this league. What happened after I said that was ridiculous. You know how he'd have games where he'd score a lot, and that didn't happen. So yeah, I kind of had to eat my words with that one, that little prediction. The Pelicans beat the Golden State Warriors 80-79 in overtime, and Memphis over the Bulls 96-91. Well, time for Major League Baseball. Braves over the Nats 6-5. Reds over the Phillies 7-4. Milwaukee beats Pittsburgh 2-1. Boston Red Sox sweep the Orioles 6-2. That series is over. Miami over the Cubs 4-1. Cleveland beats Detroit 11-0. The Yanks get a win over the White Sox. They kind of haven't really played the White Sox that well this season, but it's a whole shit show up in New York. I don't know. Just pitchers, talking to coaches, saying switch my position. And Zach Britton's not really that good, so I don't know why he would say that to his manager. Aaron Boone just needs to grow some balls and release him or trade him or something like that. You can't talk to your coach like that. It's not right. He is kind of soft, though, so he doesn't need to grow up here. Anyway, St. Louis over Kansas City 7-2. Minnesota beats Tampa Bay 5-4. Tampa Bay will make the playoffs, by the way. Texas Rangers over Oakland A's 7-4. And it's a shame to see the Oakland A's lose games like to bum squads like that. At the beginning of the season, I had Oakland as a top 3 behind the Red Sox and who else did I have over there? Red Sox and the Houston Astros. Because before the season started, I felt like, the Astros are going to score 10 a game and be the team they were in 2017. I don't know. It's not really looking like that because they've stunk flatly since before the All-Star break. And have really played like shit since. So San Francisco 5, Colorado 2. San Francisco Giants have been playing very well since the All-Star break. I expect to see them make the playoffs just by an inch. Angels over the Astros 3-1. The San Diego Padres beat Arizona Diamondbacks 8-2. Fernando Tatis Jr. returned from the shoulder injury. He was put on a 10-day, the 10-day disabled list, in which he ended up spending a couple more weeks. But the injury's healed, and the Padres are going to make that push for October. Finally, Toronto beat Seattle 8-3, and those were your scores from the Major League Baseball. Now we have a fantasy football number 1, and I'll just get right into it because I don't want to keep you guys waiting. When it comes to drafting a fantasy football team, you must be well prepared to kill the snake. That was not an innuendo. Most Americans will be participating in fantasy football draft via the snake. It's the 12-team league. It's the simplest. It's what you kind of show somebody who's playing fantasy football for the first time, and then when they get some notches under their belt and championships, then they can start moving on to the in-person fantasy football leagues when everybody goes to a bomb-ass barbecue and the draft board is in the living room and there's beers galore. But you got to start somewhere. ESPN, CBS, Yahoo, couple engines in which you could go with fantasy football online. I suggest ESPN. You get the most information, expert breakdowns of every single player, and then when you draft them, you keep that coverage, that's pretty awesome, especially for when you're first starting out, and you want to know all the basics, and kind of you want everything right in front of you. Projections of what they're going to do, injuries, how long they could take to heal from an injury, whatever you need to know about a player. ESPN got that. Between your lottery pick, who's playing in your league, and what I mean by who's playing in your league, like how smart they are, how well they know fantasy football. Because you can have leagues where it's a bunch of duds and blondes and motherfuckers starting Matt Schwab and the depth of the offensive skill talent, that's always key. And it's not just the preseason rankings and draft sleepers. It's understanding what those charts mean and understanding why certain players are important for how you drafted. So, those are, it's hard for people to stay consistent, especially in your first year when you see a bunch of these charts, stuff like that. You don't really know what's going on. But consistency is the key. Eventually you learn to decipher the charts and what this means for, let's say you get Patrick Mahomes. The Chiefs freaking air it out pretty much every week during the season. But they do run the ball. So you would probably be smart to get, so if you drafted Patrick Mahomes, when you come back for that second pick in the first round, maybe cuff a good receiver. And I think I think that's a good example. They only use handcuffing when we're talking about like halfbacks. And maybe you could do it with a starting wideout and maybe the number 2 on that team. And that's a method of success. It's been tried. It could work depending on where you fall in the draft and how smart everybody is and where you pick. Nothing changes the fact that your ass needs to be in position to dominate, whether it's the first round or the 17th round. And what I mean by being in position to dominate is doing your homework, reading player profiles, and when you have your plan and have that scripted out, you need to be ready for when it doesn't work. Let's say if you're number 2 and you want Patrick Mahomes, I don't know why I'm using him as an example. Let's say if you want Aaron Rodgers, he's the best quarterback in the league. But you have the number 2 pick, and your buddy wants to be a dickhead and take Aaron Rodgers. So what you would be smart in doing is having like script out your draft. And you can also do that by going into search engines of most of these leagues. Most of the engines that allow fantasy football also have a calculated mock draft. So let's say if you want to take Aaron at 2. So you'll set it up where you already have Aaron Rodgers, and then the mock draft will allow you to be able to practice a strategy that's effective. The first year of fantasy football, if you don't really know too much what's going on, you know football. So you don't want to just be picking players. You have to know offenses, what the players' capabilities are, what their strengths and weaknesses are week in and week out with the defenses that they will be facing, and injury patterns, pass production as well is very important, very key. Where are we? So let's start with a pretty basic rule. And I kind of gone over it already. Just be consistent with studying, finding out what players can do, what they can't. And another important thing, I think, which I haven't seen too many people do, is study your opponent. So you know who you're going to face. Usually on the next Monday morning, the league will reset after taking down all the stats from the Sunday's game. You're going up against me. You see that I got like Aaron Rodgers, Chuba Hubbard, and I got for receivers. Let's say like it's just a good squad. You know what I mean? Just look at the players who you'll be facing individually. And that's key too, because if you start a shitty defense and they give up points, the non-studying is going to lose you more points. So studying your opponent and their lineup for the week is key. You have enough time to do it, so you don't have to sit there Monday and study the whole thing. You see who they got, you see the defense are getting ready to play, and then you make your decisions based off that. Now, just because it's Tom Brady, just because it's Aaron Rodgers, just because it's Patrick Mahomes, doesn't mean that they're just going to all go out there and throw a shit ton of touchdowns and dominate or even be successful. So you need to plan for the inevitable of one, a bye week in which you're not going to be able to start that star quarterback. And another backup you have to get that's good, just in case one of your guys starts to fall off. And most fantasy leagues have an open bench, so it's good that you can add depth throughout the season when guys get hurt and when guys suck, or you want to try to make a trade, a ballsy move, something like that. I think that's key as well. So if you're unsure, like I said, of exactly how to do that, if the mock draft thing sounds too complicated, please contact me and I'll show you in the right direction as far as that's concerned. I've won a couple championships in fantasy football of late, last couple years. So if the mock draft confuses you, just contact me and I got you. I can be pretty quick at the mock draft, the situational stuff. So if you know or have an idea of where you're going to pick and you know who you want, let me know, and I can help you if the mock draft's confusing. If you're in a 12-team fantasy league, you'll end up with 5 top 60 picks. Once you get a selection, which is 1 through 12, it's going to be easy to think about the very first pick. You're gonna be overcome with emotion, like, oh yes. Let's say I'm number 1 or I'm number 5. Oh, I know who I'm gonna have here. But you need to think about the other 4. The 4 core picks. What I mean by core picks, the top 60. Guys that you'll have that will be your starters for a good part of the season. In my opinion, you should go with a starting halfback or a wide receiver with your very first pick. I've broken that rule before in years in which I had Patrick Mahomes 2 years ago. I had Aaron Rodgers last year. You know how that went. But I think it's key to get a guy, number 1 guy first, with that first pick. Don't get nervous and go quarterback, because there are other offensive skill players who will get you points. Granted, the quarterbacks will get the most points, but that's not guaranteed. So getting a Nick Chubb, or like a Devontae Adams, guys that you know are one of the best in the league. If you have an opportunity to grab guys like that versus quarterbacks, in which you don't really need a star quarterback to boom for your fantasy football team. So drafting a quarterback later might be good. I always thought the start of the second round, but that also depends on where you pick and who you're playing with, because you might be playing with some guys that know what the fuck they're doing. Now, drafting these guys doesn't mean shit if they're not heavily backed up. And this is kind of like the term handcuffing, which most fantasy football players do with their running backs. The example of a great, perfect running back handcuff would be, flashback to the Miami Dolphins, Ronnie Brown and Ricky Williams. Both had over 1,000 yards that season. Both had over 10 touchdowns. Ricky Williams had 3 receiving. But the fantasy points that those 2 motherfuckers put together it was ridiculous. So that example, when I was real young, led me to go with this term as well. What would be a good example for this year? A handcuff. Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jerick McKinnon. Those 2 gentlemen play for the Kansas City Chiefs. So we know Edwards-Helaire is going to be the starter. So he's going to get bulk of the carries, more catches, I would assume. But then you also have to factor in how often running backs get injured, and splitting in the time split too, because in this example, Jerick McKinnon is not a bum. He is a running back that definitely could go for 1,312 touchdowns in a season every year. So handcuffing those guys is key. If you have a chance to do another great running back handcuff would be Kareem Hunt of the Cleveland Browns and Nick Chubb. Damn, second time I said his name. When Kareem Hunt first came from the Kansas City Chiefs to the Cleveland Browns, I was kind of skeptical because he had that 6-game suspension for the bullshit off the field. But when those 2 got it together and they were running, it was magic to watch. And this season, there's no Kareem Hunt suspension, and Nick Chubb is poised and projected to be the best running back in football. Now, Kareem Hunt playing beside him, Kareem Hunt was once one of the best backs in football. And I think why people took a step back as far as the consideration of this was his off-the-field issues, because you know that shit was coming with a suspension. Again, I'm not really going to comment on it and what it was, because I wasn't there, and I'm going with the player first. So yeah, as much as you can, if you have that opportunity, handcuff the running backs and pay attention to bye weeks, because your stars, your guys, your favorite fantasy players aren't going to be able to play every single week, and you need to prepare for this. Most people who don't prepare for when their stars have bye weeks fuck up, end up getting smoked. So it's good to have those players that can back up your stars, the guys that make most of your points. Drafting smart and thinking ahead is going to help you. It's really simple. Participate in mock drafts if you know how to do it with your pick, league specifics, and then also you have to know what combos a talent is able to be used in your league. Most snake leagues, anything goes, but if you're not doing a snake, you're doing a PPR or one of the, I forgot the name of the other one. That's when you need to heavily consider aligning your talent as much as possible. And don't be afraid, because, just because the draft is over and you didn't get maybe everybody you wanted, there will be many opportunities down the road for you to do so. Because you might have idiots playing in your league, and certain guys want certain guys on their team, so they'll be willing to make trades. So definitely that's something to pay attention to. Specifically every single week, if you really want to win, you need to be consistently studying, consistently watching games and trends, and just staying on top of it. So when you're finally on the clock, you know your options, you know what you want to do, you have an identity of the team, you have an idea of your team's identity. Go ahead and start that draft, honestly. The fantasy football version of your opening drive needs to be scripted. You cannot go and sign up for a fantasy draft and get into it and not have a plan. Backing up who you see as being your starters is the best way to go. And you also need to be prepared, as I explained before, if something happens, somebody picks the player you want, then you need to have a very lengthy draft board. And that will help you too, because if you're sitting there and you're gonna be up shit's creek with no paddle, because I just took Aaron Rodgers and now you don't know what quarterback you want. So it's always good to plan for these, especially. And that's all I have for you for the first fantasy football nugget. And this also concludes episode uno, Magic Johnson. Again, Magic Johnson is the best point guard that ever played in the NBA. You don't have any argument against that. Probably one of the best passers. I loved Oscar Robertson and the way he passed, and Steve Nash, which is, he played for the Suns, and he was one of my favorite point guards growing up, second to Magic. But just the passing, Steve Nash was a better three-point shooter, and a noticeably better three-point shooter. And I think that is the best formula for a point guard, is to just be able to shoot the fuck out the three and be an assist master. I talked to a couple guys about that yesterday on the 413 Sports Talk page, what they thought was the number one best ability for a point guard, a successful point guard to have. That's two, I know, but you can't just go with the three-point shooting, because the point guard has to facilitate everything, see who's open, and possibly picks, defend, stuff like that. So I would say I'd have to agree with some of the guys as far as just knowing the floor, knowing the offense, for the number one ability of a successful point guard. Magic Johnson was great at everything. And he actually came back when he made the announcement in 1990 of the HIV. He came back after a lot of work and the disease being filtered out through his blood. I guess that was the rumor. But Magic Johnson was drafted first overall, 1979, out of Michigan State. He was very physical, and at that time, no one had really seen a point guard of that size. I think he's right around this year's Detroit Pistons number one overall pick, Cade Cunningham, it's like 6'8", 220. I think Magic Johnson was like 6'8", 230, 240 maybe. But a point guard of that size wasn't seen back then, which means he wasn't really defended well. And Magic Johnson tore up the league for 17 years. And he's the best point guard we have. Thank you for tuning in to episode 132. Do not forget that we're on YouTube, so subscribe. Like, share, comment, follow, please. You already know the deal. We're on Facebook. We're trying to grow the show and bring better and more insightful coverage. Please do not forget to tune in Tuesday night, which is tomorrow, for episode Uno Larry Bird. I will go over yet again another fantasy piece, and I will talk about the elite offenses in the NFL and ways that they can be stopped. Now, also, if you're really going to be serious with your fantasy football team, I suggest you tune in tomorrow to hear that. And if you haven't drafted yet, you might as well wait and listen to that and then make the draft. So, I love you all. Wish you nothing but health, wealth, and success. And I'll see y'all tomorrow night for episode 133 of 413 Sports Talk.